In many ways, Final Fantasy VII Remake was everything I could have hoped for. A reimagining of an all-time favourite of mine with breathtaking new visuals. The city of Midgar no longer a 2D backdrop, but a sprawling 3D metropolis, taking steampunk and cyberpunk elements and melding them together to bring this unique world to life. The gameplay too providing an incredible rush, with its fast-paced, heavy action-orientated battle system that made me savour each victory over a difficult enemy. I can't tell you how many times my heart was pounding in my chest during these epic boss battles. Every swing of Cloud's Buster Sword, every bullet from Barrett's gun arm, and every punch from Tifa's gauntlets immersed me in the action, so much that when I finally brought an enemy down, I felt rewarded and satisfied for my efforts. Indeed, a good fight in this game is its own reward. And my word, the music! Okay, this soundtrack was phenomenal. The musical score takes Nobuo Uematsu's themes, which are delightful and magical in their own right, and pays homage to them in the best possible way, rearranging them to the glory of a full orchestra. Take the battle theme for example. As you're running down the street, surrounded by enemies, a subdued version of the theme plays in the background, but as soon as you jump into a fight, the music explodes and becomes way more amped up and energetic. The soundtrack also shifts from these intense battle-heavy themes to the more nuanced slice of life and wholesome moments, and I respect just how dynamic it is. Then there are the characters. Final Fantasy VII's strength was always in its diverse cast, and the voice actors do a great job in portraying how each of them have their own personalities, motivations, doubts and beliefs. Where I feel the remake succeeds is the way in which it uses the voice actors and facial expressions to add new layers of charisma and charm, which could only be inferred by the written text and simple hand gestures in the original. It was like seeing for the first time fully fleshed out versions of my most beloved Final Fantasy characters as I always imagined them to be. I love this retelling of my favourite game, but just because I enjoyed something doesn't mean that it's without flaws or beyond criticism, because unfortunately it's not perfect. And this is where we dive into heavy spoilers for both the remake and the original, so if you haven't had a chance to play those yet, do that first. The main issue I take with this game is its storytelling, particularly with its ending. It's a shame because for the most part, the remake does so much right. From its intense opening bombing mission, to witnessing the devastation caused by the Mako reactor you helped blow up. The game pulls you in right from the start. Many of the changes they added did actually serve to enhance the characters and core themes. Take the character of Jessie. She might not have done much back in 1997, but here the addition of her backstory, extra dialogue and missions flesh out her character, making her more likeable and interesting. By shining a spotlight on Jessie and the other Avalanche members, the writers have added depth to these characters which was not illustrated to this degree in the source material. This is what it means to express creativity in an adaptation whilst remaining faithful to an original product. It's about a writer taking those characters and adding backstories and motivations that you always knew deep down they had, but didn't have a chance to convey before. Doing that right is commendable and makes for a satisfying experience. What doesn't make for a satisfying experience is thrusting in a plot device that only serves to hinder the progression of the characters. That's right, these motherfuckers. Ignoring the obvious fact that they look like they've been ripped straight out of Harry Potter, these things are always getting in the way of the characters' choices. Oh, Cloud's about to finish off Reno? Can't have that. Let's have the Whispers push him and Aerith out the door. Oh, Jessie's going to take Cloud's place in the second bombing mission? That's not how it's supposed to be. Let's have a 10-minute sequence dedicated to fighting off a bunch of swirling apparitions, just for her to end up getting injured, so Cloud can participate in the next story quest. But by far the biggest sin is during the motorcycle chase, when the Whispers literally prevent rubble from crushing the party. When a plot device intervenes to solve a seemingly unsolvable problem in an unexpected way, then that's what's called a Deus Ex Machina. Robert McKee, author, lecturer, and story consultant, writes, Deus Ex Machina not only erases all meaning and emotion, it's an insult to the audience. Each of us knows we must choose and act, for better or worse, to determine the meaning of our lives. Deus Ex Machina is an insult, because it is a lie. Every time they showed up, I felt like rolling my eyes. It would have been so much better to allow the characters to do what they want to do, just like in the original game, when Cloud and Aerith decide to flee from the church, rather than having an otherworldly force choose for them. When you introduce a living manifestation of fate into a narrative, it robs the characters of taking any credit for the outcomes of their decisions. Escaping Shinra HQ with their lives wasn't thanks to the efforts of Cloud and the gang. No, we owe it to the Whispers. Now, I'm aware of the purpose they serve in the narrative, that they are in fact the arbiters of fate, antibodies of the planet to enforce the course of this world's destiny. Any attempts to change the future is met with a timely intervention by the Whispers, who actively course correct to keep events on track, and that the party, by destroying the Harbinger of Fate, have played right into Sephiroth's hands, who seeks to defy his own destiny, which was to ultimately end up being defeated. Yeah, I get all that. I get that the Whispers' defeat means huge deviations across multiple timelines. Biggs is revealed to be alive, and Zack's last stand has been averted. Well, at least in some alternate universe anyway. I also understand why the writers chose to go in this direction, which of course was to subvert our expectations with regards to the next part. Now everything is up in the air. Certain characters who are supposed to die might survive, and so on. Doesn't mean I have to like it though. From a storytelling perspective, it all seems terribly convoluted and contrived. It's disappointing to me because many of the prevalent themes which are a core part of Final Fantasy VII have been brushed aside in favour of this fate trope. The original FF7 poses some pretty powerful questions that are still worth contemplating about. Profound questions like, is it right to sacrifice people's lives for the greater good? Are we at all justified taking natural resources from our planet for the sake of a comfortable life? Are there moral limits to self-preservation? Are there moral limits to corporate ambition? These questions, alongside themes of environmentalism, anarchy, and corporate greed, make the story of Final Fantasy VII compelling and more relevant in today's geopolitical climate than they have ever been. And it feels like this ending disregards that by abandoning those interesting topics for the generic fight against destiny theme, which has been done so many times before and to much better effect than what was done here. It's a shame because I believe the themes of FF7 are strong enough to stand on their own without incorporating this multi-dimensional timeline nonsense. What's also concerning is how they move on from here now that the stakes have been irrevocably shattered. In the next town over, Cloud and his companions proceed to ask the local residents about whether they saw a man in a black cape with a long sword pass through, even though they just saw him open up a portal into another reality at the edge of creation. Who's to say he hasn't cut through the fabric of time again and is lingering there? Then there's the awesome feats of power we saw Sephiroth perform in the original. Remember that dragon he slays in 2 hits during the Nibelheim flashback? Remember how the Midgar Zolom was impaled through a tree? These scenes work so well in demonstrating the sheer power difference between our characters and Sephiroth. It gave us a sense of the real threat we faced. At this point in time, we're nothing compared to him. But now that we've recently been jumping off flying chunks of concrete and survived having a building thrown at us, Sephiroth slaying the dragon and the Midgar Zolom ain't such a big deal anymore. So, how could the remake have done better? Well, first things first, remove all whispers from the game. Like seriously, their presence only serves to dilute an already strong narrative. They're not needed. Once you get rid of the plot ghosts, what you're left with are characters who are free to embrace the outcomes of their choices, without worrying about altering fate. In the real world, there are no do-overs, no repeats. Bad things happen, but that's just a part of life. The original game understood this. Many times our characters made mistakes. They failed. But through their struggles and sacrifices, they grew to be better people. That's what made their individual character arcs so good to begin with. By coming to terms with their tragic pasts and choosing to fight on regardless to save the world is part of the reason why this ragtag group is so iconic, and that shouldn't change. Next, Biggs, Wedge and Jesse have to go out like they did in the original. The fall of the Sector 7 plate and the tragic loss of the 3 Avalanche members might be upsetting. It may leave us feeling sad, bitter and even depressed. But that's the point. Their deaths in the OG show us that our characters' actions have consequences. There is a price to pay for terrorism, and Cloud, Barrett and Tifa pay for it with the loss of their comrades here. Having Biggs, Wedge and a large portion of the Sector 7 populace survive the plate's collapse lessens the emotional impact of the moment. Third, get rid of the return to the sewers mission and other pointless side quests. This is pretty self-explanatory, but backtracking to the sewers and taking care of the Sector 7 slums rat problem feels like a deliberate act on the part of the developers to stretch out the game's length. Hey, I get it. It's not easy dragging out a section of the game that was originally 5 hours long into something that's 30 to 40 hours in the remake. I just wish we got more fresh character driven chapters like we did with Jesse and Roche than this. And finally, less Sephiroth. Wait, less Sephiroth? He's a total badass. What are you thinking? Well, hear me out. Sephiroth is like a folk hero, with tales of his name and deeds spread across the planet. You're not supposed to know too much about him, which adds an air of mystery to the person you're chasing. In the original, at the upper levels of the Shinra building, you find a trail of blood and dead bodies leading up to the president's office. It's a crazy, twisted scene which ends with the party finding the president impaled on Sephiroth's sword, which leaves the player wondering why he was murdered. Honestly, I'm okay with them including Sephiroth in the first part. I accept that Motor Ball isn't exactly the most exciting boss to end the game on, and that Sephiroth was fleshed out more to give us an awesome fight to finish with. I just wish it was executed better, instead of Aerith breaking character and spouting some cryptic mumbo jumbo before opening a portal to another reality. We could have had a more grounded fight on the road. It could have been done in 3 stages, with Sephiroth toying with the characters before one-shotting them in the 3rd phase. Then there could have been a cutscene with him saying "not yet," in reference to the Genova reunion at the North Crater. I would have been satisfied with that. It would have kept in line with the beginning and middle sections of the remake, in remaining well balanced and sensible. To sum up, I still really enjoyed this game. Certain moments went beyond my expectations, which were already high to begin with, so I have to give credit where credit is due. My hope for the future parts is that they continue to focus on the more grounded character storytelling beats, instead of this overarching clash against fate narrative. But let me know what you think. Would you have kept the remake as is? What would you have changed about it? Comment down below, and if you enjoyed this video, do consider leaving a like and subscribe. Have a great day.
7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see.